Picture this. You're the CEO of a billion-dollar company, and you're about to destroy it on purpose. That's what Reed Hastings did at Netflix in 2011. While his DVD business was printing money and dominating Blockbuster, he made a decision that shocked everyone. He decided to kill his own golden goose. The result? Netflix lost 800,000 subscribers over the following months. Stock price plummeted from $298 to $77. Customers revolted, but Hastings saw something others couldn't: a future where physical media would become obsolete. Back then, they thought he'd lost his mind. What would you do if everyone told you to stop, but your gut said keep going? But this story doesn't start with that dramatic decision. It starts years earlier with something much smaller. A single overpriced late fee sparked a billion-dollar revolution. It was 1997. Reed Hastings walked into his local Blockbuster video rental store in Santa Cruz, California. He wasn't thinking about changing the world. He just wanted to return a movie. Apollo 13, to be exact. The problem? He was 6 weeks late. 6 weeks. That's a long time to forget about a VHS tape sitting on your shelf. But life gets busy, work takes over, you forget about the movie until your wife finds it. That's what happened to Reed. His wife discovered the tape during spring cleaning. The moment she held it up, Reed's stomach dropped. He knew what was coming: the walk of shame to Blockbuster, the judgment from the teenager behind the counter, and worst of all, the late fee: $40. For a movie that probably cost Blockbuster $3 to buy wholesale. Reed stared at the receipt, feeling something most of us have felt before. That burning sensation when you know you're getting ripped off. When you realize a company is making money off your mistakes instead of trying to help you avoid them. Most people would pay the fee and move on, maybe grumble about it for a few days. But Reed wasn't most people. He was a software engineer turned entrepreneur. His mind worked differently. Instead of just accepting the punishment, he started asking questions. Why did late fees even exist? Was this really about covering costs? Or was it about making money from human forgetfulness? And if Blockbuster could make $40 from one forgotten tape, how much were they making from everyone else's mistakes? The numbers were staggering. Blockbuster's entire business model relied on late fees. They weren't just a side revenue stream. They were a massive profit center. The company was literally designed to punish customers who didn't return movies on time. That $40 moment changed everything for Reed. Not immediately. But it planted a seed that would grow into something revolutionary. He started thinking about a different approach entirely. What if video rentals worked like a subscription service? The idea seemed crazy at first. Unlimited movies for one monthly price? No late fees ever? It went against everything the video rental industry believed. Blockbuster made hundreds of millions from late fees alone. Why would anyone give that up? But Reed saw something different. He saw the emotional weight of those late fees. The anxiety customers felt when they realized they'd forgotten to return a movie. The way people avoided renting altogether because they feared the penalties. The relationship between customers and video stores had become adversarial instead of enjoyable. Reed wanted to change that relationship completely. Instead of punishing customers for being human, what if you rewarded them for being loyal? Instead of making money from their mistakes, what if you made money from their happiness? Working with his co-founder Mark Randolph, Reed tested the feasibility of their idea. Hastings and Randolph mailed a DVD to test shipping feasibility. The disc arrived intact. The concept could work. The $40 Apollo 13 fee became more than just personal frustration. It became the foundation for an entirely new business philosophy. Customer obsession over profit maximization, trust over fear, subscription over punishment. In September 1999, Netflix launched their revolutionary flat-fee unlimited rental subscription model. No late fees, no shipping costs, no per-title charges. Customers could keep movies as long as they wanted without stress. They could choose what to watch without calculating penalties in their heads. This customer-first mindset would become Netflix's DNA. Every major decision Reed made going forward would come back to that same principle. How do we make customers happier? How do we remove friction from their experience? How do we build trust instead of extracting penalties? Few people realize that the foundation of Netflix's success wasn't technology or content or even vision. It was empathy. The ability to remember how it felt to be on the wrong side of that $40 late fee, and the determination to make sure no customer ever felt that way again. But success has a way of creating its own problems. And as Netflix's red envelopes began appearing in mailboxes across America, Reed would face a challenge that would test everything he believed about business. By 2003, Netflix had posted its first profit of $6.5 million. By 2004, that number jumped to $49 million. The red envelopes were everywhere. Blockbuster was struggling to keep up with their DVD by mail model. Wall Street loved them. Employees were celebrating. Everything pointed to unlimited growth and profits. But Reed saw something different when he looked at those same numbers. He saw a ticking time bomb. While his team focused on quarterly earnings and subscriber growth, Reed was studying the iTunes and Napster era. He watched how digital downloads destroyed record stores overnight. He saw how streaming changed everything. Physical CDs became worthless almost instantly. The pattern was clear. Digital always wins. Physical media always dies. Reed realized something terrifying. Netflix wasn't really in the movie business. They were in the physical media business. And physical media was doomed. Think about it. Every DVD Netflix mailed cost money, shipping costs, warehouse costs, inventory costs, lost and damaged discs. The entire operation depended on trucks and mailboxes and people handling physical objects. But what if movies could travel through internet cables instead? What if customers never had to wait for shipping? What if Netflix could deliver entertainment instantly to any screen? The technology wasn't ready yet. Most people still had dial-up internet. Streaming video looked terrible and took forever to load. But Reed knew technology always improves. Internet speeds would get faster. Video quality would get better. Here's where it gets real. Reed was managing two completely different mental timelines. In the short term, DVDs were profitable and growing. In the long term, DVDs were dead technology walking. Imagine being in his shoes. Everyone around you sees success. Your board wants you to focus on what's working. Your employees are proud of what they've built. Your customers love the service. But you know it's all temporary. Reed spent sleepless nights thinking about this impossible choice. Should Netflix disrupt themselves while they were winning? Or should they ride the DVD wave as long as possible and hope they could adapt later? The iTunes and Napster era taught him a brutal lesson. Companies that wait for disruption get destroyed by it. Kodak ignored digital cameras. Nokia dismissed smartphones. Blockbuster laughed at online streaming. But companies that disrupt themselves survive. Sometimes they even thrive. Reed faced the loneliest burden in business, being the only person who sees the storm coming. His team saw blue skies and smooth sailing. He saw hurricane clouds on the horizon. The emotional weight was crushing. How do you convince people to abandon something successful for something uncertain? How do you ask employees to help destroy their own creation? How do you tell investors you want to cannibalize your profitable business? What made everything change was Reed's realization about timing. Netflix's DVD success wasn't just a business achievement, it was a strategic advantage. They had millions of loyal customers. They had name recognition. They had revenue coming in every month. Most importantly, they had time. Other companies would eventually figure out streaming, but Netflix could start building it now. while they still had money flowing in from DVDs. Reed understood something crucial about technological disruption. It doesn't happen overnight. There's always a transition period where both old and new technologies coexist. Smart companies use that transition period to their advantage. The question wasn't whether physical media would disappear. Reed knew that by 2009, streaming would overtake DVD shipments. The question was whether Netflix would control their own destiny or let someone else control it for them. Reed made a decision that seemed crazy to everyone else. He would use Netflix's DVD profits to fund their own replacement. He would deliberately cannibalize his successful business to build an uncertain future. This wasn't just about technology, it was about courage. The courage to destroy what you've built because you see something better on the horizon. The courage to make your own products obsolete before someone else does it for you. Reed refused to let success make Netflix comfortable. He knew that their DVD dominance was temporary. He knew that technology always moves forward. He knew that companies either evolve or die. But knowing something and acting on it are completely different things. Reed was about to make the most controversial decision in Netflix's history. He was about to bet everything on a technology that barely worked. In January 2007, Netflix launched streaming with just 1,000 titles compared to their 70,000 DVD collection. The contrast was stark. The technology was primitive. But Reed believed the future was coming, whether they were ready or not. Most customers couldn't even load a single movie. That was the reality when Netflix launched Watch Now in January 2007. Reed Hastings stood in front of his engineering team, announcing something that sounded impossible. Instant movies. No waiting for mail delivery. No red envelopes. Just click and watch. The problem? The technology barely worked. Netflix's first streaming library had exactly 1,000 titles. Compare that to their 70,000 DVD options. Customers who expected Netflix's famous selection got a tiny fraction instead. Early licensing hurdles meant they could only offer about 1/3 of their DVD library for streaming. But the real nightmare was the streaming experience itself. You needed at least 1 Mbps internet speed just to start a movie. For DVD quality, you needed 3 Mbps. In 2007, millions of Americans still used dial-up internet. Even people with broadband connections faced constant buffering. Picture this. You click play on a movie. The screen goes black. A spinning wheel appears. You wait and wait. Finally, a pixelated image starts moving in slow motion. The audio cuts out. The video freezes. You refresh the page and start over. Netflix's technical team worked around the clock trying to solve problems that seemed impossible. How do you stream high-quality video when most internet connections can barely handle email? How do you compete with DVDs when your streaming looks like a blurry mess? Customer complaints flooded in daily. People couldn't understand why Netflix had created something so inferior to their DVD service. Some customers thought their computers were broken. Others assumed Netflix was testing unfinished software. Here's where it gets real. Most Netflix employees thought streaming was a massive mistake. They watched the company pour millions into technology that frustrated customers and delivered terrible results. Why abandon their profitable DVD business for something that clearly didn't work? The engineering team faced impossible bandwidth problems every day. Internet infrastructure in 2007 wasn't built for video streaming. Cable companies charged enormous fees for data usage. Server costs were astronomical. Every streamed movie lost Netflix money. Internal meetings became tense. Employees questioned whether Reed had lost his mind. They'd built the most successful DVD business in history. Customers loved getting movies by mail. Why risk everything on streaming technology that might never improve? But Reed saw something different. He studied internet speed trends obsessively. He knew broadband adoption was accelerating. He understood that technology always gets better and cheaper. His conviction wasn't based on what streaming looked like in 2007. It was based on what streaming would become in 2010, 2012, 2015. Reed faced the loneliest position in business again, being right about the future while everyone else focuses on the present. His employees saw streaming failures. He saw streaming potential. His customers complained about buffering. He imagined instant entertainment in every home. Think about it. YouTube had already proven that people would watch low-quality video online. Millions of users tolerated terrible video quality just to access content instantly. Reed realized that convenience could overcome quality problems, temporarily. Netflix's approach was deliberately gradual. They launched streaming in January 2007 and slowly rolled out access, completing the rollout for all customers by June. This strategy let them test their systems without catastrophic failures. And here's the interesting thing. Despite all the technical problems, streaming started reducing customer churn. People who use Netflix's streaming service, even with its limitations, were less likely to cancel their subscriptions. They got addicted to instant gratification, even when the experience was frustrating. This was the proof Reed needed. There was real appetite for instant entertainment. Customers would tolerate poor quality if it meant no waiting. The market existed. The technology just needed time to catch up. In January 2008, Netflix made streaming unlimited for all subscribers at no extra cost. What seemed like a money-losing experiment was becoming their secret weapon. Little did they know, this painful learning period was preparing Netflix for something bigger. Every streaming failure taught them valuable lessons about video compression, server capacity, and user experience. Every customer complaint helped them understand what people really wanted from digital entertainment. Reed's faith in streaming wasn't blind optimism. It was calculated conviction based on technological trends and human behavior. He knew that internet speeds would increase. He knew that video quality would improve. He knew that storage costs would decrease. Most importantly, he knew that Netflix needed to control their own destiny. If they waited for someone else to perfect streaming, they'd become irrelevant. By starting early and accepting temporary failures, they were building expertise that would matter later. Few people realize that Netflix's streaming success didn't happen overnight. It took years of patient investment in technology that looked terrible compared to DVDs. But Reed understood that revolutionary changes always start with primitive technology that gets better over time. What they didn't know was that their biggest test was coming. A crisis that would either destroy everything they'd built or force them to rebuild it stronger than ever. In August 2008, a database corruption shut down DVD mailouts for 3 days, threatening everything Netflix had built. Netflix employees walked into their offices expecting another normal day. Instead, they discovered their worst fear had come true. The entire database was corrupted. Years of customer data, movie ratings, and personalized recommendations had vanished overnight. Think about it. Netflix's secret weapon wasn't just their red envelopes or streaming technology. It was Cinematch, their recommendation algorithm. They knew what movies you liked before you did. They understood your taste better than you understood it yourself. That personalized experience kept customers loyal, even when competitors offered similar services. Now, it was gone. The panic spread through Netflix's headquarters like wildfire. Engineers rushed to their computers, hoping they'd find some way to recover the lost data. Customer service phones started ringing. People wanted to know why their movie queues had disappeared, why their ratings were missing. Why Netflix suddenly felt like a stranger. Reed Hastings walked through the office that morning, watching his team work frantically to solve an impossible problem. You can imagine the weight he felt. Netflix had built their entire competitive advantage on knowing their customers. Without that data, they were just another DVD rental company. The technical team worked around the clock for 3 straight days. No DVDs shipped during this crisis. Netflix's famous delivery system ground to a complete halt. The company that prided itself on reliability had become completely unreliable in a matter of hours. Here's where it gets real. Most companies would focus on quick recovery. Get back online fast, restore whatever data they could find, apologize to customers, and hope the crisis passes. But Reed saw something different in this disaster. Instead of just fixing the broken system, Reed made a radical decision. Netflix would rebuild everything from scratch, not on their own servers, not with their existing infrastructure. They would move everything to Amazon's cloud. Amazon Web Services was still relatively new in 2008. Most companies ran their own servers in their own buildings. The idea of trusting your entire business to someone else's computers seemed crazy, risky, expensive. But Reed understood what this crisis had revealed. Netflix's existing infrastructure wasn't built for the future they were planning. It couldn't handle millions of streaming customers. It couldn't scale globally. It couldn't survive the kind of growth Reed envisioned. The database corruption wasn't just a technical failure. It was a wake-up call. Netflix needed infrastructure that could support their streaming ambitions. Infrastructure that could handle massive amounts of data from customers around the world. Infrastructure that wouldn't collapse under pressure. Reed chose the risky path. Again. The migration to Amazon's cloud began after the 2008 incident and would take years to complete. Netflix engineers had to learn entirely new systems. They had to rebuild Cinematch from the ground up. They had to recreate years of customer data relationships and movie connections. And here's the interesting thing. The forced rebuild made everything better. When you're starting from scratch, you can fix all the problems that accumulated over time. You can design systems for future growth instead of current limitations. You can build something stronger than what you lost. The new cloud-based recommendation system became more powerful than the original. It could process more data. It could learn faster. It could handle millions of customers making billions of rating decisions. Most importantly, it could scale globally without breaking. Few people realize that this disaster prepared Netflix for everything that came next. The cloud infrastructure gave them the foundation to handle massive streaming growth. When millions of customers started watching movies online instead of waiting for DVDs, Netflix's systems could handle the load. The emotional roller coaster was intense. Netflix went from crisis to technological rebirth in a matter of months. What seemed like a company-ending disaster became a competitive advantage that would last for years. By August 2016, Netflix closed its last physical data center, completing their transformation to a fully cloud-based operation. They leveraged Open Connect CDN technology to deliver content faster than ever before. The infrastructure could now support whatever ambitious plan Reed would devise next. The cloud migration gave Netflix something their competitors didn't have: the ability to handle millions of streaming customers worldwide without missing a beat. The capacity to recommend movies to people in different countries with different tastes. The technological foundation to reach customers wherever they were. Reed was about to discover that wherever they were included places traditional entertainment companies had completely overlooked. Microsoft had a problem that would become Netflix's biggest opportunity. November 2008. Reed Hastings walked into a meeting with Microsoft executives that would change everything. They weren't talking about movies or entertainment. They were talking about Xbox 360, a gaming console that sat in millions of living rooms around the world. Microsoft's Xbox users loved gaming, but they wanted more from their consoles. Entertainment beyond games. Netflix had a different problem. They needed a way to get streaming into people's homes without building expensive hardware. The solution was brilliant in its simplicity. Netflix would create a Silverlight-based player for Xbox 360. Gamers could watch movies between gaming sessions. Xbox owners would get more value from their consoles. Both companies would win. But here's where it gets real. This partnership came at the perfect moment for Netflix. They'd already added streaming for DVD subscribers in February 2007. In January 2008, they'd made streaming unlimited for all subscribers at no extra cost. Now they needed a way to reach customers beyond computers. Think about it. Buying a TV costs hundreds of dollars. Building cable infrastructure costs billions. But partnering with existing gaming consoles? That gave Netflix instant access to entertainment centers without spending a dime on hardware. The Xbox partnership launched something much bigger than anyone expected. Suddenly, Netflix wasn't just a DVD company with experimental streaming. They were part of the living room experience, part of how people relaxed at home after work. Reed realized something crucial during this partnership. Netflix didn't need to compete with TV manufacturers. They didn't need to build their own streaming devices. They just needed to be available on devices people already wanted. This understanding came from hard experience. Netflix had actually shut down their internal hardware Netflix Player project in 2007. Instead of building their own device, they chose to encourage integration on existing platforms like Roku. The Xbox deal proved this strategy was right. The strategic genius became clear when Netflix expanded beyond Xbox. Sony PlayStation welcomed Netflix with open arms. Nintendo added streaming capabilities. Roku, Apple TV, and dozens of other devices followed. Each partnership created a new pathway into homes. Each device integration made Netflix more convenient. Each platform relationship strengthened their position against traditional entertainment companies. What made everything change was Netflix's understanding of consumer behavior. People don't want multiple devices cluttering their entertainment centers. They want one device that does everything: gaming, streaming, music, apps. By May 2011, Netflix had become the largest single source of internet streaming traffic in North America. 30% of all internet traffic during peak hours came from Netflix streams. That's not a typo. Nearly 1/3 of everything flowing through the internet was people watching Netflix. The device strategy solved a problem Netflix didn't even know they had. Customer churn dropped dramatically when people could access Netflix on multiple devices. Once you could watch on your Xbox, your laptop, and your phone, canceling became much harder. Here's the interesting thing. Netflix's device partnerships created a network effect that traditional media companies couldn't match. The more devices Netflix supported, the more valuable their service became. The more valuable their service became, the more devices wanted to support them. Netflix became the invisible infrastructure of home entertainment. They weren't competing with TVs or cable boxes. They were making every connected device a potential Netflix player. Every smart TV, every tablet, every gaming console became a Netflix delivery system. To improve streaming performance on all these devices, Netflix later launched their Open Connect content delivery network in 2012. This allowed them to peer directly with internet service providers, making their streams faster and more reliable across every platform. The emotional weight of this success hit Reed differently than previous victories. This wasn't just about technology or business strategy. This was about changing how people experienced entertainment. About making good content accessible anywhere, anytime. Few people realize that this device strategy prepared Netflix for their most controversial decision yet. Having millions of customers accessing Netflix through multiple devices created a safety net for what Reed was about to do next. The partnerships gave Netflix something their competitors couldn't match: ubiquity. They were everywhere their customers wanted them to be. When you could watch Netflix on any device, Switching to a competitor meant giving up that convenience. Looking back, this was the real turning point. Not when Netflix perfected streaming technology, but when they made streaming accessible everywhere. They forced the entire entertainment industry to play catch-up with a distribution model nobody had anticipated. But success in distribution meant nothing without content. And Reed was about to discover that Hollywood partnerships could be just as fragile as they were valuable. Netflix thought they'd found the perfect content partner, until Starz walked away from nearly $1 billion. January 2010 marked a breakthrough for Netflix streaming. Reed Hastings had finally secured something that could transform their limited library into something real. A deal with Starz Entertainment that would give Netflix access to first-run movies and back-catalog content from major studios like Paramount, Lionsgate, and MGM. Think about those numbers. Netflix spent $117 million in the first half of 2010 alone on streaming rights, rising to $200 million per year, for content that would normally cost hundreds of millions to license individually. Starz executives thought they were getting easy money from a small streaming experiment that would never threaten their core cable business. They were catastrophically wrong. Netflix's streaming service exploded overnight. Customers who had been skeptical about the limited streaming library suddenly found blockbuster movies and hit TV shows available instantly. No more waiting for red envelopes, no more planning movie nights around mail delivery schedules. The partnership worked too well. By 2011, Netflix streaming traffic was consuming massive amounts of internet bandwidth. Families were canceling cable subscriptions. People were choosing Netflix over premium movie channels. The little streaming experiment was becoming a serious threat to traditional television. Starz executives started panicking. They watched their cable subscriber numbers decline, while Netflix subscriber numbers skyrocketed. The content they'd licensed for what seemed like reasonable money was being used to destroy their own business model. Here's where it gets real. Netflix knew they had a problem brewing. Reed could see the tension building with content partners who were starting to view Netflix as competition instead of customer. The solution seemed obvious. Pay more money. Show good faith. Prove that partnerships could benefit everyone. In 2011, Netflix made an incredible offer, nearly $1 billion over 5 years, to renew the Starz deal. A massive increase from their original payment. An offer that would have made Starz one of Netflix's biggest expenses and most valued partners. Starz said no. Imagine being in that boardroom when Starz executives made that decision. Walking away from nearly $1 billion because you're afraid your partner might succeed too much. Choosing to protect a declining cable business over embracing the streaming future. The rejection sent shockwaves through Netflix. Reed had just lost access to thousands of popular movies and shows that customers expected to find on the platform. Worse, he'd learned that traditional content companies would never be reliable long-term partners. Starz's decision revealed something crucial about the entertainment industry. Old media companies weren't interested in helping Netflix succeed. They wanted to use Netflix when convenient, then cut them off when streaming became threatening. They wanted the licensing revenue without the competitive consequences. What happened next? No one saw coming. Instead of scrambling to replace Starz content with similar licensing deals, Reed made a radical decision. Netflix would create their own content. Original movies, original TV shows, original everything. The idea seemed insane. Netflix was a technology company that delivered other people's content. They weren't Hollywood producers. They didn't have directors or actors or studios. They had software engineers and recommendation algorithms. But Reed understood something that Starz executives missed. Content creation wasn't about having Hollywood connections. It was about understanding what audiences wanted and giving it to them. Netflix had better data on viewer preferences than any traditional media company. The emotional weight of this pivot was enormous. Reed was asking his company to become something completely different. Not just a streaming platform, but a content creator competing directly with Disney, Warner Brothers, and every major studio in Hollywood. Think about the financial risk. Original content costs tens of millions per project. Unlike licensed content, there's no guarantee anyone will watch it. If Netflix's original shows failed, they'd lose money and customers simultaneously. Few people realize that losing stars forced Netflix into their greatest strategic advantage. By creating original content, they could offer something no competitor could match: exclusive shows and movies that existed nowhere else. The question wasn't whether Netflix could survive without traditional Hollywood content. The question was whether they could create better content than Hollywood itself. You can see how this rejection changed everything. Netflix went from being dependent on content partners to being independent of them. From licensing other people's creativity to funding their own. From following Hollywood trends to setting them. Looking back, this was the real turning point. Not when Netflix launched streaming or partnered with devices, but when they realized that controlling content meant controlling their destiny. This foundation would support the most radical business decision in corporate history. Reed was about to make a choice that would test every customer relationship Netflix had built. July 12, 2011. Reed Hastings makes a decision that would lose 800,000 customers and nearly destroy everything he'd built. Picture Reed standing in front of his laptop, drafting the blog post that would trigger the biggest crisis in Netflix history. The announcement seemed simple enough. Netflix would separate their DVD and streaming services. Customers who wanted both would pay separately for each. The math was brutal. Streaming cost $7.99 per month. DVD rentals also started at $7.99 per month. Customers who previously enjoyed both services for around $10 would now pay nearly $16. A 60% price increase overnight. Reed knew the announcement would hurt, but he believed customers would understand the logic. Streaming was the future. DVDs were expensive to maintain. Separating the services made financial sense for Netflix's long-term survival. He was wrong about customer understanding. The reaction was immediate and vicious. Netflix's phones rang constantly with angry customers demanding explanations. Social media exploded with outrage. Longtime subscribers felt betrayed by a company they'd trusted for years. But Reed wasn't finished. On September 18, 2011, he announced something even more controversial. The DVD service would become an independent company called Qwikster, a completely separate website, separate billing, separate customer accounts. The name alone became a national joke. Qwikster sounded like a failed startup from 1999. Customers would need different passwords for different services. Their movie ratings wouldn't transfer between platforms. The convenience Netflix had built over a decade disappeared instantly. What happened next, no one saw coming. Between Q3 and Q4 2011, Netflix lost 800,000 subscribers after the Qwikster announcement. Their stock price fell by 35%. Wall Street analysts downgraded their rating. Media outlets called Reed delusional. Late-night comedians made Netflix their favorite punchline. Here's where it gets real. Even Netflix employees started questioning Reed's sanity. People who'd worked beside him for years wondered if he'd completely lost touch with reality. The company that prided itself on customer obsession had just infuriated their most loyal customers. The internal pressure was crushing. Board members demanded explanations. Investors threatened lawsuits. Employees watched their stock options lose value, while customers canceled subscriptions daily. Reed faced something deeper than business criticism: personal attacks. People questioned his competence, his judgment, his basic understanding of customer needs. The man who'd built Netflix from a $40 late fee was being called incompetent by industry experts. Imagine being in his shoes during those sleepless nights. Everyone you trust thinks you're wrong. Everyone you respect thinks you've made a terrible mistake. The entire business world is watching your company collapse in real time. But Reed saw something others couldn't. DVD business was already dead. Not dying. Dead. Postal costs kept rising. Warehouse expenses kept growing. Physical media was becoming more expensive every quarter while streaming costs decreased. The question wasn't whether DVDs would disappear. The question was whether Netflix would control the transition or let market forces destroy them slowly. Think about it. Reed could have reversed course, apologized to customers, restored the old pricing, saved face and preserved subscriber numbers. Most CEOs would have chosen that path. Instead, he chose to endure the pain, to let customers make the choice between DVDs and streaming, to force the decision he knew was inevitable anyway. The emotional toll was devastating. Reed wasn't just watching his company struggle. He was watching relationships deteriorate, employees lost faith, customers felt betrayed, investors questioned everything. You can see how lonely that position became. Being the only person who sees the storm coming while everyone else enjoys the sunshine. Having conviction about the future while everyone else focuses on present problems. The Quickster announcement lasted exactly 1 month. On October 10, 2011, Reed reversed the brand separation, but maintained separate pricing. DVDs and streaming stayed financially separate under the Netflix name. Few people realized that the separation forced exactly what Reed intended. Customers had to choose streaming or DVDs. Most chose streaming. The transition he'd been trying to encourage for years happened in 3 painful months. Netflix's streaming subscriber base stabilized quickly. People who stayed chose the future over the past. They committed to instant entertainment over physical media. They validated Reed's belief that convenience would ultimately win. The controversial decision positioned Netflix for everything that came next. Global expansion became possible because they weren't carrying DVD infrastructure costs. Original content investments made sense because streaming margins were higher. What seemed like Reed's biggest failure became his most important success. He'd sacrificed short-term comfort for long-term survival. He'd chosen being right about the future over being popular in the present. The pain of 2011 would transform Netflix from an American DVD company into something the world had never seen before. Today, Netflix streams to over 269.6 million paid members across more than 190 countries. Consumer behavior and technology trends validated Reed's long-term strategy. Streaming overtook DVDs by 2009, exactly as he predicted. Sometimes the greatest leaders aren't the ones who build something successful. They're the ones brave enough to tear it down and build something better. Reed chose long-term survival over short-term comfort. He chose being right about the future over being popular in the present. This philosophy of self-disruption became Netflix's no-rules-rules culture that he later codified. The next time you're streaming anything, anywhere, remember the man who risked everything because he saw a future others couldn't imagine. That $40 late fee changed how the world watches entertainment forever.